So, welcome everybody. Great to see you all. Nice group here today, and a mixed group, a diverse group. And with that in mind, what I'd like to suggest, and I think this is a first for CC, is that we do a little bit of what I've called sermon bingo. I've got some bingo cards here, which is a grid of words that I'm going to use in my talk. And I've got about 20 or so, and I've got some pens, and I'm going to offer this to those who would like to participate, okay? Now, the way it works is, when you've got all 12, you need to shout. Well, what should we shout? Sorry? House, thank you. Shout house, and then you can pick up for that extremely engaged member of the congregation who's hung on every word gets a prize. And I'm going to put that there, so it's never out of your mind, all right? Now, I'm not saying all this because I'm planning to give an extremely boring speech and I need to win your attention, but it's just more in recognition that we have a diverse age range here. So, could I have a helper? A couple of helpers. We've got pens. Put up your hand if you'd like to be a part of this, and we'll just quickly come round. Oh, quite popular. Oh, we've only got 20. Right. So this might result in some disruption to the talk at the point at which somebody shouts bingo. And they will come up at that point and collect their prize. And for those who have collected all 12 words but not been quite quick enough to claim the main prize, you can exchange your sheet for a smaller prize after the last song. Are we all understood? Luke, are you going to come and read out the psalm for us? Great, thank you. And we've just got a couple of people with their hands still up. Emily, over here. Oh, yes. And somebody in the corner there. Yes? Right. I think we're all settled down, so does that microphone work? Yep.
The righteous will flourish like a palm tree. They will grow like a cedar of Lebanon. Planted in the house of the Lord, they will flourish in the courts of our God. They will still bear fruit in old age. They will stay fresh and green, proclaiming, "The Lord is upright. He is my rock, and there is no wickedness in him."
That's fantastic. Thanks, Luke. So yes, Psalm 92, verses 12 to 15. That's the focus of this talk. And for those of you who are still getting a sheet, we've already had one word, and I'll give that to you for free. It's flourish. Yes, Psalm 92 is an example, isn't it, of a magnificent poem. It's a vehicle for the expression of spiritual feelings. It's a guide to worship and an invitation to prayer. And as I say, we're going to be talking about trees today. The title of my talk is Standing Strong, Flourishing Like Cedars of Lebanon. Okay? And as I say, the Cedars of Lebanon features a lot in the Bible, but we're just looking at this psalm today and thinking about psalms. You know, they're metaphorical musical poems, aren't they? So we ought not to press them too hard, analyze them too much, tease them apart forensically. They're not designed to give moral instruction. Yeah? This is a personal response to worship at the temple and a reflection on God's faithfulness and covenant love. So that's the scripture, and we'll come back to that presently. But I want to speak firstly about the language of nature. Yeah? This talk is about references to trees, and more specifically these cedars, these magnificent cedars of Lebanon, and how their stability and strength reflects the people of Christian faith. But I do wonder whether anybody here is thinking this morning, sermon on trees? Really? Is that not a bit hippie? Tree huggers, all that sort of thing. Shouldn't we be focusing actually on moral instruction on a Sunday rather than talking about trees? Well, a couple of weeks ago, Rupert started off a series, The Roots of Life, and highlighted to us that the Bible's packed full, actually, of references to trees, and where they figure as a metaphor for human flourishing. Okay? One of my favourite books, Windows of the Soul, by Ken Geary, urges us to consider nature as a language through which God speaks. A language that's, in fact, every bit as cryptic as the Hebrew language used to write the Old Testament. And I love that image of nature as a language. In fact, John Muir talks about nature as the manuscripts of God. That's another quote I love, the manuscripts of God. King Solomon was a student of nature, having asked for a discerning heart of wisdom. And the Jewish historian Josephus tells us that Solomon spake a parable upon every sort of tree, from the hyssop to the cedar. The heavens declare the glory of God, says the psalmist, day after day and night after starry night. And in fact, talking of starry nights, Vincent van Gogh, and I quote, is quoted as saying, "All nature seems to speak. I cannot understand why everybody does not see it or feel it." Seems clear, doesn't it, that we should consider how we can be attentive to the words that God has spoken through nature. Music, you've got art, poetry, these are all helpful, aren't they, in trying to connect us with what God is trying to say beneath the surface of things. Now, my wife, Emily, makes pictures of trees in our local park around Arthur's Seat, and this, as well as the images that follow it, are of her paintings, some of her paintings. And for my part, I find writing poems helpful. This one's called A Tree in Mind. A tree in mind. I approach respectfully, not knowing myself. Shifting, you pretend a nation celebrates to the clash of a million flashing shields. Not content with that, you become now a mirror for a mind in perfect health, and I, drunk with tiny inspirations, stagger beneath buds foaming above the fields. And from the mud rise ivy-clad cathedrals of thought, snaking branches map memories hardwired to the heart. Patterns emerge, a city of signposts, libraries of secrets where silent pennies drop. I'm filled with the fragrance of a friend who knows me. Rooted here, I can't tell us apart. You are my right mind, my past and future, a living signal. You bring me to a stop. I have a question for you all. In what ways do you bring your attention to the words God has spoken through nature, through the manuscripts of God? And there's going to be an opportunity at the end to come up and hear from a few people about your own thoughts. So I'd just like to say a few things about the Cedars of Lebanon that are mentioned in this psalm. They were one of the most aromatic and resistant woods known, of especially good quality, having no knots in them, being solid. They were used for many construction projects, like the King's Palace and indeed the temple in Jerusalem itself. Really key to this, they reached a huge height, over 100 feet, and had a very wide girth and an unusual shape with the branches spreading out directly at right angles. Historically, the cedars of Lebanon were hugely plentiful. In fact, these trees grew in massive thick forests in Lebanon, north of Israel, as can be seen in the map here. And they feature as the emblem of the Lebanese flag. However, now they're few in number. And this type of tree, as I said, is mentioned over 100 times in the Bible. You know, as well as the arts, science also can be a powerful means of bringing our attention to the words God has spoken through nature. And there's a particular book in here somewhere which has inspired me. I don't know if anyone's read this. The Hidden Life of Trees. Anybody? Really fascinating book. Really recommend this. I'm going to refer to this. It's by German forester and ecologist Peter Wohlleben. And in it, he makes the case that the forest is a social network. And what I want to do is just reflect on what trees might have to teach us about the deep connection, how deep connection and spiritual maturity create the sort of strength and stability which the psalmist celebrates in this psalm today. So, I'm going to be saying, did you know, a few times. The psalmist says that the righteous will flourish like a palm tree. So what are some of the things that make a tree flourish? Well, according to this book here, the root systems of neighboring trees intersect and grow into one another. Scientists have discovered that most individual trees of the same species, growing in the same stand, are connected to each other through their root systems. And this creates greater structural stability and enables them to exchange nutrients and sugar, and actually even information, such as an impending insect attack, like effectively sharing resources to keep the whole community healthy. And also within the soil, there is an underground cottony web of fungi called mycelium present in the soil. And this fungi effectively extends the reach of the tree's roots, connecting it to other trees. And these thin filaments of mycelium penetrate the ground, weaving through it with almost unbelievable density, so that over time, so over decades, it networks an entire forest. I think that's actually amazing. So this fungi acts as a gigantic sort of nutrient redistribution system, sort of equalizing the differences, the weaknesses and the strengths of a forest, redistributing resources between strong and weak trees. Who'd have known it? So my thought here is, what can we take from this notion of trees exchanging resources as social communities and communicating and supporting one another? And for me, this picture of a microscopic web reminds me that everything we do as individuals has an impact and is connected. And so thinking of other biblical images of community that is connected, aren't we, stones in a temple? We're parts of a body. And it's important to touch on this because it's tempting to forget that in today's individualistic society. And I personally find it really helpful to consider how the strength of a mighty tree, such as a cedar of Lebanon, might actually depend on the highly complex underground network of interconnected strands. And I've chosen to illustrate these strands with this picture of some Vietnamese women repairing fishing nets in a shop. And for our community, I'd like to suggest that these tiny strands represent the very many interactions between us, the prayers, the connections, the little acts of love that make up the relational life of our church. And my next question to you is, what small connection have you made today which has strengthened our church community? Let's not despise the small things. Right. Give and take. Did you know a substantial part of a tree lies underground? In fact, the tree roots, they extend a very long way. It's almost twice as the size of the crown of the tree. There's a lot going on under the surface. And in the case of a mature beech tree, it exhales hundreds of gallons of water each day. And as it does this exhalation, that exhalation sucks water up through the transportation networks within the tree trunk, pulling a constant supply up through the tree. So we have this picture of trees drawing in water. And of course, for me, it immediately reminds me of our need as humans for living water to sustain life and, of course, bear fruit. All our desires have deep, hidden roots. And our deeply felt desires are connected with a desire for God himself to become the person he is dreaming into being. And when we pray, we are tuning into this deeper, life-giving source and discovering our true desires and our dreams and our vision for life. And just as trees both continually suck in and exhale water in order to flourish, I think a major task of life is to find new ways of loving ourselves and others. So what I mean by this is to find that balance of receiving for ourselves and giving to others. This give and take. So one way of thinking about this is that the person who only gives to others throughout their life risks burnout, risks smothering others, risks an empty inner life. While the person who just receives throughout their life risks self-centeredness, indifference to others, and never really becoming an adult who generates life. So we need the balance between the two, don't we, over the course of our human lives, the give and take. It's been suggested that women tend to focus on the care of others in early life and then transition towards care for themselves later on, whereas men grow in the opposite direction. And this is a trend shaped by patterns of childcare and work over the centuries of human civilization. I think, for me, this picture of a man with his back turned to us at an open window looking out into an empty street kind of expresses something about this balance between the public and the private self, between giving and receiving. And to take this analogy further, according to Henri Nouwen, who founded the L'Arche communities for people with learning disabilities and those without, said that communities which keep growing involve both sides of generative care. That is, they include those who we can be friends with and therefore receive from, as well as those whom we find difficult and therefore give to. So again, on a community level, we need both. We need that balance. So my third question for you all is, do you need to discover a new way of caring, either for yourself or for others, in order to continue to flourish? Breathing in, breathing out. Slowness and strength. There's a connection there. The psalmist writes, "Good people will grow like Lebanon cedars." But did you know the secret of a tree's strength is its slow growth? It's something I learned recently. It's a slow rate of growth, and you can see that in the rings of this tree. You know, young saplings that grow beside their mature mother tree tend to be starved of light by the tree canopy above, so that they grow very slowly. And scientists have determined that the slow rate of growth is the secret to growing to a ripe old age for a tree. And their inner woody cells are tiny and contain almost no air. And that means that they're more flexible, so they bend in storms rather than break. And also their tough little trunks are more resistant to decay due to this slow growth. So the theme here is slow growth and strength. And just as young saplings grow according to the amount of light that is let down through the tree canopy, I wonder whether similarly for people, becoming enlightened with knowledge and wisdom, that's a slow process, isn't it? It builds character. It keeps us humble. We are people of little light. People of little light. We could continue the analogy. In order to flourish and to become the best me I can be, I need to slow down. I just love this picture. Don't know if anybody else knows this picture. Just immediately feel more relaxed. You know, in the Ancient Wisdom Sermons series we had back in March, we explored the importance of slowing down, the importance of thoughtfulness in today's society of like constant, technology, anxiety, constant productivity and consumerism. Such an important topic. And we keep coming back to it in the church, keep coming back to it. It almost feels like a core value. Slowing. According to author Dallas Willard, to become the me I want to be, I must ruthlessly eliminate hurry from my life. And I've got another book. Don't know if anyone's read this one. Really enjoyed this. John Mark Comer adopts Dallas Willard's quote as the title of his book, and advocates for the relevance and importance today of ancient spiritual practices of slowing, of simplicity, of Sabbath, silence, solitude. Question. Are you in a season of little light? Is there an invitation to slow down? How are we all doing? Have we found anyone found any words on their sheets yet? Permanently rooted. In verse 13, the psalmist describes the righteous as planted in God's house. And there's a sense of being rooted and established in God's truth in a loving Christian community. And again, in the Ancient Wisdom series that I mentioned, we heard about the vow of permanence and stability, which the monks of St. Benedict took, by which they committed to stay in the monastery for life. And I was really impacted by that. I felt encouraged. In this way, those monks committed to a different sort of journey, not a physical journey out into the world, but they committed to that inner journey, working out their own spiritual growth. And we reflected on what it might mean for us in terms of slowing down and staying longer and committing to a particular community and place and purpose. And how also there's a temptation in modern culture today to always want to move on quickly to the next job, the next location, the next house, relationship, whatever. And to bring us back to trees are rooted to the spot, aren't they? As Corinne Polwart, who's one of my favourite songwriters, says, trees cannot run. And they need to stand together to help each individual tree. In fact, when the storms move in October through Europe, it's a matter of life and death for trees, and they need to stand together. Did you know that every tree trunk is different, and the nature and texture of the wood is different, a testimony to its individual life growing? The pattern of woody fibers within each tree is different, and this is important. It's a testament to its own history, but it also plays a critical factor in protecting the community, and I'll go on. So imagine a huge storm is happening and all the trees the gusts of wind are taking the trees. Really? That's amazing. Come on then. Who was first? Did anybody, Kirsty, did you see who was first? Okay, come on up here. And did anyone else think they were first? Right, come on up. Whoever thinks they were first, come on, let's not be, let's be inclusive about this. All right, we got one or two? Good, because I have got something you can share together. Right, let's give them a quick round of applause, right? Right, do you want to grab that? for those who might have words that haven't struck off yet, there is still time. There are still prizes. Please keep listening. Right. So we were just getting into a dramatic moment there about, and there was a storm. Do you remember? Yes, there's storm, and it's blowing through this forest, and when the gusts of wind strikes the trees, they start to bend over. Okay, but because each one is unique and different in its structure and nature, it swings back in a different way, in a different direction, and at a different speed. And effectively what that does, it means that, well, some are moving backwards, others are swinging forward again, and then it slows the trees down. Essentially, the crowns knock against each other, and there's this stabilizing dynamic that happens. So when the next gust of wind blows in, the one that would perhaps take the tree down, bend it further over and break it, actually by that point the trees have stabilized, they're upright again, and then the process starts again. So there's this dynamic of trees protecting, supporting one another within a storm. And I just think this is actually a wonderful picture of the community of people standing together, each one of us different, each one of us unique with our own life stories, bringing that authenticity to the community and support of one another in life's storms. We respond differently, don't we? Each of us brings something unique. And when I'm having a difficult time in life, I find that people around me bring something different, and that I need that. Everybody's responding in their own way. God wants us to become who we are as individuals in order that we can support each other in the wider community. And the community can bring stability to us in times of trouble. So my question to you is, have you considered how your unique experience and perspective brings stability to this community? And how are you being recentered by others around you? And then finally, fruitfulness, and specifically fruitfulness in old age. The Psalm 92 culminates with the theme of God as the elixir of life and the picture of ripe old age as a covenant blessing. The psalmist says, the righteous will still bear fruit in old age like a tree. Did you know that in 2014, an international team of scientists conducted a study of 700,000 trees across the world, and they discovered that, contrary to long-held assumptions, the older the tree, the quicker it grows. Did you know that? So in the case of trees, being old doesn't mean being weak or being cowed and fragile. It's quite the opposite. It means being full of energy and highly productive. This is being such a surprising morning for me. Come on up. Well done. Give these guys a round of applause. Guys, well done. Right, there's chocolate in the bottom there, like big Mars bars and stuff.
Oh, I'm going to go for this.
You compare it with the Satsuma.
That's a lot. You should have given us trees, man.
There's Mars bars. Well, I'll have a pack of crisps as well.
Oh, okay.
Do you want Satsuma?
No, I'm good.
Where was I? Yeah, productive. That was the word, wasn't it? Yeah, productive. Yeah. Well, whether it's somebody in this room, in this community, whether it's somebody within the wider world, somebody who's maybe a celebrity, or perhaps more likely a character in the Bible, that we all need inspiring examples of people in later life, don't we? Do you agree with that? I certainly find it hugely inspiring when that is the case. And I know several people in this room who meet that description. Luke's gospel tells how Simeon, a man well advanced in years, had the honor of being the first Jew to recognize the promised Messiah. And of course, Naomi in the book of Ruth is an inspiring example of a woman who mentors her daughter-in-law and plays and has an important role to play in later life. And to understand what it means to be fruitful, I find Henri Nouwen's statement helpful. He says there is a great difference between successfulness and fruitfulness. It's tempting to focus on performance for praise and admiration, and I've experienced this myself in the world of work. That can be exhausting, and it's its own reward. That idea of pursuing success, and in a work context, later in life, that relentless pursuit of success can ultimately result in a loss of identity and a sense of despair in later life, loss of purpose. But fruit, however, in a person's life is a sign of what is hidden. It's not for the praise of other people. And it's not necessarily praised and admired and recognized in society. Spiritual maturity comes from having faced life's many challenges and having transitioned through multiple crises. We grow fruit through weakness, through vulnerability, through the death of the ego, and seasons of pruning are part of God's plan for us. And Rupert spoke a bit about fruitfulness last time. I love this picture of this beautiful old lady. Her hands are wrinkled and gnarled. Her face is full of character, and it expresses peace, joy, and wisdom, a life lived to the full. And looking at this picture, I like to imagine that with a positive foundation of love, she's been able to recognize the gifts of life, even those that the diminishments of old age bring. And she holds a photo of herself as a young person. And I might imagine that nature has equipped her to integrate life by remembering experiences to garner wisdom rather than despair. So, who are the most alive elderly people you have known or know? What have you learned from those who over the course of their lives have withered rather than flourished? And I think that's an important point as well, because we learn a lot from all of these things. I'm going to stop talking now. So in conclusion, what makes us flourish and grow in strength and stability like cedars of Lebanon? Is it tuning into the language of nature, including through music, art, poetry, or even science? Is it being connected through a caring, reciprocal social network? Through balancing self-care with concern for others over the course of a lifetime? Is it about slowing down, staying longer, and standing together as a diverse community of individuals in hard times? And is there something there about prioritizing fruitfulness, being fruitful over success? So I hope there may be some things there that resonate with you, and I would like to welcome anyone who'd like to share, say two or three people to share for up to a minute at the microphone. Anything that's been revealed or illuminated for you, or in fact anything that has you found challenging or made you feel uncomfortable. And then once we've done that, we'll have a song.
Enjoying when nature takes its own way. So I may try to do something, I may prune, I may take pests away or plant or something. And invariably my efforts are limited. And the results of my efforts are limited, but nature is doesn't care really so much about that, and takes its own way of doing things. So what I find particularly encouraging is when we take our hands off and our minds off, and how nature then takes over. I'm thinking particularly of places like, if you've ever been to an old road tract, when a new road has been built and the old part of the old road has been left, and 20 years on, nature takes over, and 20 years on or 30 years on, you may not even see that there has been a road there. I was particularly impressed in Belize, which was once a very highly agricultural tended place, and then something happened and the population got diminished by a huge number, and now you can't, in the rainforest, it looks very much like the original rainforest. So nature has its way of regulating, and I find that incredibly encouraging. Not that I'm against people making their living in those places, but nature is strong and a bit like those cedars of Lebanon, and I hope those cedars again will, re-establish themselves in their strength.
Thanks, Stefan. Yeah, great pictures there of nature rewilding places, taking back spaces.
We've just been fortunate enough to come back from our holidays. We were just in Scotland, and last week we were fortunate we had nice weather and we were out in nature, and yeah, we managed to do a bit of slowing down and appreciating it. I also spent last week, we spent a bit of time thinking about this poem. I came across it a couple of years ago. There was a fella I played rugby with who died during COVID, not from COVID, but they couldn't have a funeral at the time, really, and they had a bit of a gathering for him after COVID was all finished, and they shared some poems and things that he liked, and this was one of the poems, and I really liked it at the time, and I still like it. So if you know it, it's by Mary Oliver. It's called The Summer Day. Who made the world? Who made the swan and the black bear? Who made the grasshopper? This grasshopper, I mean. The one who has flung herself out of the grass, the one who is eating sugar out of my hand, who is moving her jaws back and forth instead of up and down, who is gazing around with her enormous and complicated eyes. Now she lifts her pale forearms and thoroughly washes her face. Now she snaps her wings open and floats away. I don't know exactly what a prayer is. I do know how to pay attention, how to fall down into the grass, how to kneel in the grass, how to be idle and blessed. How to stroll through the fields, which is what I have been doing all day. Tell me, what else should I have done? Doesn't everything die at last and too soon? Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life?
That's beautiful. Thanks, Roy.
I was really encouraged by that because I've been thinking about trees for years and years. And I love these pictures of them getting older and stronger, and particularly together. I've also been studying old people for a number of years. And I know that isolation makes them frail. And I really feel that I should have spoken to you about this dream of mine before, but I would really like to see us forming a real big house community for people who want to live together. That's the issue. I think a lot of modern people don't want to be in community. They want to be isolated, and society teaches them they need to be independent. In fact, my mother-in-law said to me once, I said, what's more important, family or your house? Because she wanted to be in her house. She said, independence, that's the thing, isn't it? But she was helpless and she had to have home help. So it wasn't independence, it was a lie. So the dream is we need a house, we need a place where we agree to live together. And we, as old people, know how to pray, or we should do by now. And I think the country needs so much intercession at the moment. There's 120 people in the upper room praying for 10 days. And they got that power that Jesus promised, and the mission came. And we need to see this, and I don't see how it's going to happen unless we do it. So thanks for listening. And thanks for the trees.
Thank you. Fantastic. Living in community.
I have a few trees near my parents' house, and one of them I always look at because it just reminds me of being stable and being able to do lots of things. But I also wrote a poem about trees and about my mum, and this reminds me of her as well.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for everyone who's shared. That was really beautiful. I think that's gone a lot to ponder about. I think about. Should we have our last song? Maybe we could just take some of those images, that sense of community, the strength of life in older age, that the balance of giving out and taking in all those points, and just ponder which one or ones are for us at this moment in time. Thank you. Thank you, Tom.